Hello everyone. Today we will show you the film Lucy, released in 2014, starring Scarlett Johansson. Let's get started with the video. In the first scene, we see a cell that has been divided into several smaller cells. Then, we witness a primitive proto-human sipping from a lake. Lucy begins her narration by stating that life began billions of years ago, and then ponders what humans have done with it since then. Lucy, a young American woman, is standing outside a hotel in Taiwan with her week-long lover, Richard. He instructs her to take a briefcase up to Mr. Zhang's room. Lucy refuses to do anything for Richard, so he binds Lucy's wrists to the briefcase handle, leaving her with no choice. She enters the lobby and tells the receptionist that Richard is sending her up to Mr. Zhang before nervously giving the clerk her name. Lucy glances out the window and sees Richard smiling and trying to be encouraging until he is fatally shot. A gang of thugs emerges from the elevator and forces Lucy to accompany them. This moment is paired with footage of a cheetah chasing, mauling, and carrying the carcass of a gazelle between its teeth. They drive Lucy to Zhang's place. Lucy vomits because there are bloodied bodies on the floor. Zhang dials a number and asks a man to interpret for Lucy and scribbles the code for opening the briefcase, 140, on a scrap of paper. Lucy opens the briefcase to reveal 4 1-kilogram packets of blue powdered crystals. Lucy is subsequently assigned a task, which she refuses to undertake until she's smacked. Lucy is awakened in a motel room. Her stomach is wrapped with a bandage. Zhang's guys walk in and toss some clothing on her. She is led to Zhang with 3 other men. A British man known as the Limey enters the room to inform Lucy that she and the other males have had a medicine called CPH4 injected into their lower intestines. The drug is expected to be the next great thing on the market, and they want to smuggle it all over the world. Lucy is then taken to a room and locked up, where one of the thugs tries to get into her jeans before kicking her in the stomach, right where they cut into her. This tears the medication bag, allowing the powder to enter Lucy's system. She begins to writhe and thrash all over the room, even reaching for the ceiling before collapsing back to the floor. During this time, we come across Professor Samuel Norman, who is delivering a lecture to a school about his study on the potential of the brain. He essentially outlines what could happen if people could exceed the recommended 10% brain capacity, as well as its responses to particular situations that would allow the brain to submit to immortality or reproduction. Essentially, if the subject doesn't like their surroundings, they'll choose immortality and relocate. However, if they're content with their surroundings, they'll be more likely to reproduce, complete with images of every species engaging in sex. If humans could, say, reach 40%, they could alter. Lucy reawakens, her eyes flashing a brilliant blue. She sits up straighter and calmer than before. When a gangster enters the room, Lucy spreads her legs to tempt him. The thug smiles and sets his gun down on the table. Lucy grabs his belt and shoots the other goons while they're eating after she frees herself. She's shot in the shoulder, yet she's able to extract the bullet without experiencing any pain. She then consumes all of the thug's meals before departing. She then goes to the hospital where her senses are heightened and she can hear people's voices from outside the automobile. When she arrives at the hospital, she can plainly read the signs as if they were written in English for her. She arrives in an operating room and shoots the patient because he wouldn't survive anyway and coerces the physicians into removing the bag from her stomach. She then contacts her mother to tell her all the details of how she feels. The doctor then extracts the bag of medications from Lucy's stomach, and after she informs him it's CPH4, he tells her that it's something pregnant women create 6 weeks into their pregnancy as nutrition for the fetus, and that the doctor is shocked Lucy has survived this long with it in her body. Lucy returns to the hotel one more time to locate Zhang and murders his bodyguards before shooting his tattoo artist away and inserting knives into both of Zhang's hands. She does a Vulcan mind meld into his head and sees where the other 3 drug mules are going using images of their plane tickets. Lucy goes to her friend Caroline's flat and reads all of Norman's research in a fraction of a second and then phones him to inform him of what she's discovered. He is astounded to learn that she reads everything, even as she continues to convey what she is feeling and experiencing now that she has attained 20% brain capacity. She has the ability to influence electronics, as evidenced by her appearance on Norman's hotel room TV, as well as his phone and radio. Lucy's story about shooting the patient has spread, so she alters her hair color and style as she walks through the airport. She contacts Captain Pierre Del Rio, a French police officer, to alert him of the other drug mules. She then boards the plane and resumes her brain studies, typing furiously on her laptop. The flight attendants order Lucy to switch off her computer, and Lucy requests a glass of champagne while also instructing one of the flight attendants to clean her nose without looking, and the lady's nose bleeds as a result. Lucy accepts the champagne glass and raises it to salute to knowledge. She sips, and the words 40% appear on screen. She finds a tooth in her glass and spits up 3 additional teeth. Then, in full front of the passengers and flight attendants, her skin begins to dissolve. Lucy dashes to the restroom where her fingers begin to melt and her face begins to melt. She takes the rest of the CPH-4 and snorts it, returning to normalcy, but she passes out. Lucy awakens in a hospital room with Del Rio and a few other officers and medics waiting for her, shortly after the other mules are captured. She sits up immediately to the chagrin of a nurse. Meanwhile, Ji, one of Zhang's henchmen, arrives with more armed men to find the remaining mules. After killing them, they take them into a room and cut the drugs out of them. Lucy walks out of the room, flanked by armed men. Except for Del Rio, she can put them all to sleep with a wave of her fingertips. They discovered Zhang's men together, and with her brain function now at 60%, she maneuvers them about the hall and prevents Ji from fleeing with the briefcase full of drugs by erecting an invisible wall. She takes the medicines from Ji and prepares to flee, but instructs Del Rio to accompany her. He believes he is of little value to her, but she approaches him and kisses him, asking him to return as a reminder. Lucy utilizes her powers to find a new place, taking over Del Rio's car and driving maniacally through the streets, despite the fact that she has never driven before. Zhang and Ji are following her. Lucy and Del Rio track down Norman and his colleagues at a university, where she begins to reveal what she's discovered, her brain strength now exceeding that of a regular human being. While this is going on, Zhang and his men infiltrate the location and begin firing. Lucy gives the remaining CPH-4 to the academics, who synthesize it into a liquid material that enters her circulation. Her brain function drops to 70%, and her hands begin to transform into a black wormy ooze that hooks itself to the computers in the room, providing Lucy with additional energy from matter and hence an unbelievable amount of power. As her brain function improves, she manipulates matter in such a way that she appears to erase everything in the room, leaving the academics standing in white space before constructing some type of new age supercomputer in front of their eyes. As Zhang's men are being shot down by the police, he orders Ji to do something. Ji fires a rocket launcher through the room, transporting Lucy millions of kilometers to Times Square. With a sweep of her hand, she can change the course of time. She journeys backwards in time from early 20th century New York through colonial days and even all the way to ancient times to meet the proto-human from the opening scene. They touch fingers, transporting Lucy through the cosmos, all of space and time, and bestowing upon her endless and infinite power. Zhang enters the room and raises his rifle carefully to Lucy's head. Then she meets her goal of 100%. Her body vanishes, leaving only her garments remaining. Zhang fires his gun into the air. Del Rio enters the room and shoots Zhang to death. The black matter in the room vanishes and transforms into a flash drive, which lands in Norman's hands, expanding and concluding his research. Del Rio inquires about Lucy's whereabouts. On his phone, he receives a message that reads, "I am everywhere." The film finishes with an aerial image of Zhang's body, with Lucy's voice saying, "This is what life can do."